turn off the lights, sit back, and enjoy the Mistress of Horror.
I used to work in a very remote town while living in my hometown 30 miles away. I was 20, and my dad had just secured me my very first car to make the commute. It was a mid-1990s Thunderbird with oxidating paint. It leaked every fluid I put into it and had shitty gas mileage. Needless to say, I was in love. My parents knew that while I was a very reasonable person, I was also 20 and had to drive down a 2-lane, 18-mile stretch of very bad country road. Dad decided to give me an assignment for my first trip to work in my new car. He called me as I was leaving for work on my first morning driving out there. "It's foggy out today. I want you to be careful." Our area of the country is known for fog that has less than 300 feet of visibility on average. Yeah, of course I will. I'll call Mom when I park. I had already told her I would. "I want you to do something while you're driving today." "Sure, what?" "Count the crosses," he said. As I drove to work in the fog, I counted the crosses westbound of the road and made a mental note of the number. I got to work safely, called my mom before punching in, and went about my day. At the end of my shift, the fog had cleared, and I drove home and counted the crosses eastbound. Later that evening, my dad asked me, "So, how many were there?" I counted 19. That's 19 people who died on that road you'll drive every single day. Those are the only recent ones too. There have been more. You remember that when you're driving. Eventually, I got used to the drive. Every now and then there would be a cross that was new. Sometimes another would be gone or knocked over. Some were replaced regularly around the holidays. Others were forgotten and were reclaimed by Jimson and the tumbleweeds. My job was toxic. It was starting to harm my physical health and my mental well-being. My great relief was driving. I used to blast Tom Petty and Aerosmith over my killer radio and sing along. I could shed the worst of my day behind the wheel. Driving became my joy. It was when I was driving home after a night shift around Labor Day when I first saw him. He was standing on the side of the road, thumb out, headed east. I was young, and I knew not to pick up a hitchhiker. They are very unusual in our area, and I didn't notice a broken car on the shoulder. The area was so remote that it didn't make a lot of sense for him to be out there. There was nothing for 10 miles in any direction. What was odd was he didn't seem to see me. His eyes were fixated on the road behind me. There was a stain on his pants and shirt, but in the darkness I couldn't tell much more than that. I kept on driving. My grandmother was diagnosed with cancer that same week. She passed away on All Saints' Day. I saw him again in the same spot before New Year's. I thought he was a farm worker and was cutting across the fields to get to the road to hitch a ride. I noticed that his shirt and pants were stained once again. He didn't see me. It was like he was looking past me, eyes fixed on the road behind me. I was hospitalized with pneumonia on New Year's Eve. After that, I had a seizure. I saw him one more time. It was the last time. It was in June. I was cracking down at work, drinking, thinking that my loved ones would be better off without me. It was evening, but the sun hadn't set yet, so I finally really saw him. He didn't see me. I don't think the other cars saw him either. He just looked vacant, hopeless, staring into the sinking sun. He looked to be about 40. He was Latino. He had on a gray t-shirt, dirty jeans, and a faded red baseball hat. I realized that the stains I had seen on him before were actually blood. I wasn't surprised to see him, but I was expecting him. I was rattled pretty badly. I went home and drank until I could fall asleep and not dream. I quit my job shortly after for my own well-being. I was heading down a bad path. It was the best thing I could do for myself. I went to pick up my paycheck, and as I headed home, I had the strangest urge to stop my car. I pulled over to the shoulder, where the man always was. It was pure daylight then, and I began to look around amongst the crosses that were in varied states of decay. It didn't take me long to find what I was searching for. Strangled in some overgrowth, I found a battered, faded cross that read, "Poppy." 1964 to 2005. I knew it was his cross. I picked it up gently and planted his cross firmly into the ground. On the newly erected memorial, I left one of my mother's nicer roses that had survived the summer's heat. I thanked him in the best Spanish I could muster and said a prayer on his behalf to a deity I wasn't even sure existed anymore. After this, I got in my car and took one last glance at Poppy's cross in my rearview mirror as I drove away. I don't know if there's anything or anyone out there looking out for us. I'm not sure if ghosts exist, or if it was something my wounded mind made up to warn me that I was teetering too close to the edge on my more reckless nights of driving. I doubt I'll ever know. A man did die on that road nonetheless. Another father warning me of dangers, just like my own did. If he was real though, I hope he finally got a ride home. Over the summer, I took my son and his friend on a ride at the local fair. My son has Down syndrome, which is relevant to the story in that he doesn't have the sort of fantastical imagination of his peers. Said differently, he doesn't make shit up. As we were sitting waiting for the attendant to buckle everyone in, my son hit himself. This is not normal behavior. I've never seen him do this before in his entire life. So of course I was like, what the hell? He replied, John told me to. I said, who is John? We are literally locked and loaded into a spinning something of death. He replies, pointing in front of us, John and Steven, the guys standing in front of us with ketchup all over their faces. No one is standing there. He has never mentioned them or done anything like this since. I was raised Southern Baptist. We didn't tell ghost stories around the campfire growing up. We told possession stories. We believed in them because demons are biblical. I remember having lively debates with my friends about the biblical case of demons and how not believing in them means you don't believe something God said. But I still doubted. It seemed too supernatural, even for a Christian. My mother was an alcoholic, a drug addict, and had a lot of mental health problems that she never got help for. I lived with her my entire childhood and found solace in the church. She had that sort of lukewarm faith, made lots of comments like, God and I have an understanding, instead of doing anything remotely Christian. She didn't keep me from pursuing my beliefs, so I didn't pressure her about her own. One Saturday, I was taking a nap in my room and I had a dream. I dreamt that my mom came in, screaming at me, angry over nothing at all. The dream was very realistic and I thought it was real until I woke up in my bed. Moments later, she came in the room screaming, over nothing at all. Just angry and mean, spitting with rage. I tried to just sit quietly, although I was so confused and frankly freaked out by the weird prophetic dream. I chalked it up to, well, she's mad and yells a lot, so coincidence, and put it out of my mind. Later, when my mom calmed down and I tried to approach her for a calm conversation, she looked at me like I was making the whole thing up. She didn't remember yelling at me about anything. A few weeks later, I was inside watching TV when I heard my mom screaming from the backyard for me to come outside. When I stepped out on the porch, she was standing near the woods holding a huge snake. My mom stood maybe 5'2", and this snake was at least 7 feet tall. She held it by the tail, not behind the head like I had been taught in my science class. And she beckoned for me to come take it from her. My mother had always been afraid of snakes and critters in general, but she had the snake up like she was proud of it. I ran back in the house and stayed in my room. At dinner, I asked her why she was holding the snake. She didn't remember anything and told me that I had quite an imagination. Yeah. I had rationalized these experiences within the context of knowing that she abused substances and was probably too drunk or high to remember these scenes. But her behavior during these two instances was truly unlike her average altered state. High or drunk, she was silly and sometimes mean, but not hateful. These occurrences were strange, and she was more cruel than I was ever used to. The strangest, though, was yet to come, and I get sick to my stomach thinking about it. I was supposed to be staying at a church lock-in overnight. My mom had dropped me off at 8 p.m. and wasn't supposed to pick me up until 10 a.m. the next day. She was completely sober and acting normal when she left the church. My friend and I were challenging each other to stay awake all night, and we were writing down what time each person eventually fell asleep. I stayed up the longest and finally gave in at 4:25 a.m. Just as I laid down in my sleeping bag, I heard a loud bang on the window outside the chapel where we were sleeping. No one else stirred. I figured a bird had flown into the window. I settled back down and then I heard a series of loud bangs, though they were coming in rapid succession. One knock on each window in the chapel. It was like something was circling the church and hitting each window as it passed. But it was moving so quickly there was no way it could have been one person hitting all the windows. My friends started to wake up, confused, and someone suggested it was the church chaperones playing a trick on us. The exits were locked from the inside, and only the pastor had the key. He was supposedly asleep in one of the Sunday school rooms, so one of the kids ran to check. He came back, pastor in tow, and the bang stopped as soon as he entered the chapel. We told him what happened, and he said he would go outside to check the grounds. He unlocked the front door and yelled loud enough to make the rest of us scream in terror. My mother was standing at the front door, looking wild, dirty, and sweaty. She was breathing heavily and muttering under her breath in a language I couldn't detect. The pastor asked if he could help her, and she just stared past him, directly at me. My heart felt like the only thing keeping it from stopping was sheer adrenaline. The last thing I wanted to do was walk out those church doors, but I felt like I had no choice. She didn't say a word. I just gathered my things and walked towards the door. My pastor insisted that I did not have to leave and that I would be safe at the church that night, but I ignored him. She was my mother, and I was terrified of her, but I felt like it was the sort of fear any child would have towards a parent. I got into the car and she drove me home in silence. When I went to bed, she stood in my doorway, staring at me. I remember seeing the morning light rising right before dozing off, still with her in my doorway. Later that morning, she seemed genuinely shocked to see me walk out of my room for breakfast. She said she was just about to leave to pick me up from the lock-in and wanted to know how I got home last night. She didn't remember a thing. My mom's behavior could probably be explained through a combination of substance abuse and mental illness. But even today, as an adult atheist, I wonder if something more sinister was going on with her. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Isabella Martin. I'm 18 years old, and you may know me as a paranormal enthusiast/writer who is completely obsessed with ghosts and all the spooky stuff that goes bump in the night. I'm actually a little bit more than that. Since the age of 16, I have been able to see, hear, and communicate with ghosts. I know, unbelievable, right? You're probably thinking I'm totally insane. Well, sit back, relax, and grab a bowl of popcorn because I'm about to tell you my actual experiences with the paranormal. Here are some important things to note before I begin. I've lived in 2 haunted houses, my childhood home and my current home. These experiences are only things that I experienced without using my gift, aka my medium gift, as I classify myself as a medium. In this post, I'm going to list some of what I experienced, where I lived, and what age I was when I experienced it. At my old house, Experience 1. The first time I ever experienced anything paranormal. I was about 6 years old. I was walking into my room, and it was pitch black, but there was a light in the living room, and I saw a shadow of a large hand wave at me on the wall. I waved back, and I realized that the hand I'd seen was the double of the size of mine. Experience 2. Years later. I was about 12. Walking into the bathroom that my whole family shared, you had to go through my parents' bedroom to get to it. I was walking in the dark, and I heard a very distinct and feral snarl. It was very creepy and scared me, and we didn't have any pets at the time, so I can't really explain where the snarl came from. Experience 3. When I was about 14, I was lying in my bed, trying to fall asleep, and I saw a figure lining my slightly open door. The next morning, I opened my door and saw the same figure run away. The same day, I saw a man in jeans and a white shirt standing in my hallway as I stood in my kitchen. I said hi, and he waved at me before vanishing. I sometimes wonder if it was the same man waving to me in the shadows years ago. Experience 4. I'm still about 14 at this time. I was sleeping in our guest room, and we had a Raggedy Ann picture that was stitched together by my grandmother. I heard a prominent scratching sound coming from inside the picture, as if someone was trying to scratch their way out of it. I was terrified and tried to go back to sleep, but the scratching continued almost all night. Experience 5. I'm now 15. I was taking a shower, and I heard a voice laugh. It wasn't a very joyous laugh. I turned around to look at my mirror, and I see my reflection, but it's staring at the wall instead of at me like it should in a reflection. Experience 6. I'm now 16 and with my friend. We decide to use a Ouija board. We were talking to a spirit, a very great man who will have his own post in the future, and he suddenly says, "It's the Midnight Man." I'm like, okay, what does that mean? I started walking around my house. Here are some of the things we saw. 1. A shadow floating above my couch. It was blacker than the night and was floating there, watching us. 2. A candle actually floating as if someone was carrying it, kind of like the Haunted Mansion ride at Disney World. It actually moved into my kitchen and then vanished completely. 3. The shadow standing at the end of my hallway ran towards my kitchen. 4. I was tripped by something or someone, but neither my friend or I could see what it was. Those were just a few of the things I saw that night. It's really touch and go with Ouija boards. Please be careful with them. Experience 7. Still 16, and again, I'm with my friend. We're sitting at my kitchen table. I had a perfect view of my bedroom door. I saw a man floating in front of my door. I stared at him for a while before he disappeared. Experience 8. I'm 17 now. I'm trying to fall asleep, and I heard a laugh, and not a very nice one, followed by scratching, coming from the Ouija box. The next morning, the planchette was moved inside the box, and the cover had been taken off. I'm not sure if it was the good man that wanted to talk, or if it was something more malevolent trying to call to me. Sometimes, it's hard to tell, especially when they take other forms to trick you, like as a child, which has happened to me before. Experience 9. I'm 17 now, sleeping in my bed. I had a Ronnie Radke poster in a glass frame next to my bed, and I suddenly heard the sound of fingers sliding across the glass. I was really scared as the sound went on for almost an hour, so I called out to it. I'm not trying to be mean, but please stop. And, like magic, it did. I suddenly got this "you screwed up" feeling, and then, about 10 minutes later, it started up again. I looked over to the poster and I saw that Ronnie wasn't the one behind the glass. It was a person, but they were burnt. I could see their eyes in the dark. I've never been so scared in my life. It looked evil and demonic. I don't know where that originated from. These next experiences are at my new house. New house, experience 1. I'm 18. I was walking to my room, and suddenly, I saw a schoolgirl. I could see through her, but I could tell she was wearing a white shirt, a black skirt, white socks, and black pumps. The only thing I could not see was her face. It was distorted and quite creepy. Experience 2. I'm still 18. I was in my bathroom, and I saw a face peeking at me through the crack of my curtain. It scared me, to say the least. Experience 3. 18. I kept seeing a shadow watching me out of the corner of my eye, but it would always vanish every time I looked in its direction. This happens a lot nowadays. I would equate it to shadow people. Experience 4. Age 18. I saw a woman in a white dress run past me. It was very quick. I don't know much about her, but I don't feel threatened by her. She seems benevolent, and I'm okay with her presence. Bonus post. It will be the same as the last post, listing my age and where I was. This is what I've seen as a medium. meaning when my gift first appeared and when I first started using it. Experience 1. I was actually at my friend's house, 16 years old. This was one of my favorites because it involves my favorite ghost to talk to. It's pretty basic and simple, but it needs to be here. Me and my friend were told to go into the bathroom mirror and chant this ghost's name. They want to be anonymous, so I'll respect their privacy. We chanted the man's name, and I saw them for the first time. This may be boring, yes, but this experience means so much to me. It made me feel like I was closer to this spirit, and to this day, I still remain closest to him. He's like my protector, and it was one of the first times that I was really able to use my gift without it just being random. Experience 2. 16 years old. I was sitting with my friend. I looked up and I saw a spirit floating, peeking from behind my door. This experience felt different. It felt like I could actually communicate with it, rather than just watch it and not being able to do anything. However, it vanished before I could use my gift. Here are the most disturbing experiences that I've ever had. Number 1. As I was walking past a mirror, a spirit sent me a message telepathically. It only said, "Mary is watching." I do not understand what this means and still don't to this day. Number 2. I have been sent many messages to, quote-unquote, come home, but I'm not sure what they meant. I still don't. I've never had anything bad happen when I came home. There was no disturbances when I came home, and no one was hurt when I came home. But they chose to send me that message for a reason, so maybe it was for my own protection. Number 3. I've been shown a burning house multiple times, and I'm honestly pretty frightened. I don't know if this is a warning or a prophecy of my house or someone else's. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what it means. So, that's it for this post, everyone. Needless to say, I've got a lot of stories to tell. That's why they're all very short. But I will have many posts in the future, and I hope you'll continue to read them.